With the way that I started preparing for the Ielts examination, I started with listening. How many of you think listening is difficult? Do not turn off that part of your brain that's also listening to the audio. Yes? A person moved from one city to another. Okay? And the question was, thank you so much for being such a patient audience. Who was paying attention? Yeah, I was telling you about my background. So I did my BTech in IT, my MBA in finance. I completed both of these in the year 2014. Ever since then, I have been working as a financial risk consultant. Yes, I'm not an English teacher, by profession at least. I have over 9 years of work experience in different geographies all over the world. I've worked in the Middle East. I've worked with clients in the US. I've worked in India. And here in Tashkent, I'm going to be living and working for the next 3 years. I happened to meet Jahangir Palativ by chance, and it was a wonderful encounter because now, thanks to that, in all of my spare time, I get to meet amazing people like you and transfer whatever knowledge I have with regards to this language that I love so much. Yeah? Other than that, I gave my Ielts exam in December 2021 in Tashkent through British Council, before anybody asks. And I got an 8.5. I got a 9 in reading. I got a 9 in listening, which I thought I would not be able to do. Speaking and writing, which are actually my forte, I got a 8 in speaking and I got a 7.5 in writing. Yeah? Through the course of the next 1 hour, I will tell you why they knocked off 0.5 from my score and also how you can achieve the perfect score in IELTS. Yeah? Now, all of you know that this is just a 1.5 hour session, so it's going to be quite intense in terms of completing each section very quickly. I'm just going to touch some key points in each section: speaking, listening, writing, reading. But I am going to open after each section. I'm going to open the round for questions. So if you feel like there is something I did not cover, or if you feel like there is something you have that you want to ask me, please go ahead. You can stop me at any time during my presentation. You can just raise your hand and you can ask me your question. Clear? Some of you are smiling at me. Okay, thank you. All right. I actually gave the IELTS when I was 23 years old. I got a 9. Yeah, straight 9. It's not that difficult for someone whose first language is English. Yeah, this was my second time in Tashkent. Yeah. So to tell you the truth, English is not the first language of any Indian. Because in India we have over 30, 35 languages. And I may be wrong about this, it might be 100, frankly. But my mother was an English teacher for 36 years of her life. So I've grown up being somebody who learned English like their first language. Yeah? I hope that answers your question. Yeah, anybody else? Anything? Yes? It's possible to get 8 or 9 in speaking with any accent. Yeah? It doesn't matter. In fact, there are people who are very successful, who are around my age, who have no accent, frankly. This is not an American accent that I'm speaking with. It's not a British accent. It's definitely not an Australian accent. It's definitely not an Indian accent. So it's okay to get any score that you want based on how you prepare for the exam. It doesn't really matter what your accent is. It does, however, matter how you pronounce certain words, but that is something that you can learn. Yeah? Okay, anybody else?
If you have a question, just raise your hand. I'll give you a microphone. Okay.
I guess they're loud enough. They don't need the microphone. Okay, anybody? Can I proceed then? Yes? All right. So now that I've told you a little bit about myself, let's begin with the way that I started preparing for the IELTS examination. I started with listening. How many of you think listening is difficult? Nobody thinks listening is difficult. Very good. Okay. Okay. Yeah? So why is listening difficult? It's difficult to understand? Native speakers, when they're speaking, their pronunciation, the speed with which they speak, right? Why is listening difficult? Yeah. Yeah, it's difficult to keep track of how they're speaking and at the same time, catch words, you know, you have to catch words. At the same time, you have to be writing answers. So you cannot like switch off from actively listening. Yes, absolutely. It is difficult. When I started preparing for the IELTS exam, frankly, I thought that listening and reading will be my strongest assets in terms of strengths. And I thought that I would have to work towards only writing and speaking, and the opposite happened in preparation. I focused more on practicing listening and reading, which was the hardest for me, frankly, and speaking and writing took a backseat. Yeah? Now, ideally, when I ask my students, who I teach IELTS, I ask them, how do you prepare for listening? So they are all over the place. Oh, I watched a couple of YouTube videos, you know. Oh, I did 5 mock tests and now I think I'm good to go with listening. Or somebody will say that I know the 10 things to do to ace listening, so I don't need to practice. Yeah? I don't know how you guys have approached listening, and I will ask you, but I would just like to share my strategies with you first. So what you need to do is first stop looking for or asking for tips. The reason why I say this is because tips are based mostly on personal opinions before you start practice. Yeah? After you've practiced a little bit, after you get the hang of what listening is all about, then it's okay to look for tips on how to strategize, how to efficiently use your time. But before you do anything, if you watch a bunch of YouTube videos that just tell you, oh, these are the 10 things to do or 5 things to do to ace listening, please don't follow that. Yeah? Number 1, have a strategy. What is a strategy? Anybody? How do you define a strategy? A method of doing something, yeah? It's not the only method, but it is your own method of doing something. So have a strategy. Each person can have a different strategy. Second, practice that strategy. Yes? It's not just enough to know it in theory. You have to actually do a number of questions, 50, 100 types of questions, using that strategy. Why? Then you train your brain to work and target questions and answers using that strategy. Number 4, gain focus. Why? Because you have to multitask in listening. It's very important. There are different accents, different conversations, different types of questions. Sometimes, in fact, in my own experience, when I was giving the IELTS exam, if I just stopped focusing for about a minute, I would be able to hear the sound coming out of the headphones of people sitting next to me on my left and right. So you have to gain focus. You have to get into the habit of sitting in one place for 1 hour and solely focusing on listening to what other people are saying, native speakers. Yeah? And the last thing, even if you have a strategy, you practice it, you gain focus, you've become Superman in listening, but if you don't know your spellings, you're not going to get any marks. Okay? So this is the gist of it. Let's proceed. Now, what's this strategy that I keep talking about again and again? Yeah? What is it? How can you do it? So everybody has their own. Let me just repeat that. There is no correct way to approach something. Each person can do it their own way. This is just my experience and my experience of teaching non-native speakers, especially Uzbek students. So you can take it and you can try and use it and see if this is something that helps you. What are they asking about? What type of question it is, okay? Consider the word limit. Excellent, very good. Guys, so I would recommend doing a couple of things. Yeah, I would recommend doing a couple of things. The very first thing you have to do is quickly skim through whichever questions they've given you time to read. What does that mean, skimming? Very quickly, just getting a gist of what's there. Exactly, just going through. Now, number 1, try to ask yourself, what is the possible answer for this question? Okay, what is the possible answer? Now, if the question is something like the hospital building was built by, so somebody here said keywords, correct? What would the keywords be here? Built, hospital building, right? So now you know that when the audio plays, you have to be actively tuned in to listen for words like hospital or medical, yes? Built is a very simple word to use a synonym for. Synonyms for built? Construct, develop, create, yeah? So your brain is now auto-tuned to watch out for these words. And listening is all about that. There are just a couple of things that if you know you have to watch out for, you can ace your listening, okay? So now when you read this sentence, you know automatically that the answer is, in all likelihood, the name of a person. Correct? It's going to be the name of a person. Good. Very nice. Next, when you're skimming through the information, you have to do two more things. Number one, understand the order of information. What do I mean by that? Anybody? Okay. Now, generally, when there's a topic like question 1 to 5, the first 1 or 2 questions would be talking about, say, some phase of the process. You know, okay, maybe the first few questions are talking about a person's schooling life, the next his career, the next his employment, the next his retirement. There is a general flow to the questions. Why is this important? Why is it important to understand the order or the sequence in which these questions are going to come? Because then you know by listening whether you've missed a certain phase and gone to the next, right? And in general, in the audio, the questions will come in order, in the same order that they're there on the computer screen or on the paper, in the case of paper-based, okay? All right, and obviously the last thing that you have to do is watch out for the type of like 2 words and or a number, that kind of thing, yeah? That changes every few questions, so you have to keep that in mind. All right, now what do you do once the audio starts? You have to multitask. The hardest things which students don't even admit is to be able to listen while you're still writing, yeah? Have you noticed that there's just a very small gap between sentences, like maybe just perhaps 1 second or 2 seconds at the most when people are speaking in these audios? And sometimes these audios have multiple people talking, like conversations between 3 or 4 people, or an MCQ type question where you have to quickly be aware of all the 4 options while listening to what's happening, right? Do not turn off that part of your brain that's also listening to the audio, yes? Second, distinguish opinion from fact. What's the difference between opinion and fact? It did happen, irrespective of whose opinion it is. Okay, so imagine in a conversation, they say, she believed her employees to be predisposed towards her negatively, meaning that she thought that her co-workers or colleagues did not like her, and that's why she left her job. But if you just wait for a few more seconds to listen to the audio, it could say, whereas, in actuality, her boss was the one, or her manager was the one who did not like her, yes? So if you fall for the first sentence, which is the opinion of that person, in general, IELTS examiners will do this a lot in audios. To confuse you, they will provide an opinion. So watch out for words like believe, thought, or assumed, yeah? And look for words that are more definitive, that are more decisive, yes? All right, paraphrasing. So paraphrasing is something all of you know, all of you practice it. It is the most important skill, not only in listening, in every section of the IELTS examination. Okay? Paraphrasing, for instance, I can tell you from my own experience of the IELTS, there was this trick question where they were talking about the reasons why a person moved from one city to another. Okay? And the question was, what is the main reason, for example, Sabina, what is the main reason Sabina decided to move from Tashkent to Bukhara? Main reason. And in the audio, they gave 4 or 5 different reasons. Yeah? They said, oh, you know, her parents moved to Bukhara, or she changed her job from Tashkent to Bukhara, or she didn't like the pollution in Tashkent, or whatever it is. They gave several different reasons, and in one sentence they said, however, the primary concern that she had was. So what is the meaning of primary? Exactly. So watch out for words that are synonymous. This is something that they do a lot in the listening examination. Yeah? Paraphrasing is a very important skill, guys. Again, the keywords would be main, despite, however, though, although. So all of your conditionals, all of your the words that you use when you want to decide or define contrast, yes? Watch out for those kind of words in listening exams. Okay. Next, pronunciation. So somebody here asked me if you can score an 8 or a 9 with an accent, right? Yes. Now, see, the IELTS examination, the audio clips will have accents from different parts of the world. It could be a British accent, an Australian, Mexican, American, it doesn't matter. But as a student or a potential candidate who's giving the IELTS, you have to get familiar with the different accents, yeah? You have to learn to hear numbers and words spoken in different accents, yeah? So the British can't will be can't in America. Or how in America will be how in British. Yeah? Or mate in America will be, in Australian accent, might. Hello, might. Yeah? So you have to get used to the kind of words that are spoken in different accents. And also numbers, very important. Now, I have said intonation and tempo. Anybody knows what intonations are? Intonations. The rise and fall, the modulation of the voice when one speaks in the language. Yes, it's called an intonation. Also, it's done to drive your focus towards certain parts of sentences, yes? So word stress is very important. And what is tempo? So tempo is basically how fast or how slowly I can speak. Yeah? It's the speed with which I will speak or a person will speak. That's the tempo. So you have to train your brain to listen to these key things when you're listening to the audio clips. Okay, get used to the different ways of expressing time. 7:30, 7:30, 30 minutes to 8. Yeah? Or quarter to something. Now, a lot of my students will make a mistake with this, but the more questions you practice where time is expressed, you will be able to get the hang of it. Okay, word limit, like you said, that you have to know what 2 words and or a number will mean. So based on this word limit, sometimes you will get a question, a blank or a box, where you have to either write at the park, or just park, as an example. So which one would you go for? If there was an option, like a sentence completion question, and there was a blank, so which would be correct to write? At the park, or park? Very good. So if it was just place, colon, and a box, you would just write park or the park. Both would be correct, right? But if it was a sentence completion question, where it said, Tom and Harry decided to meet dash at the park. So the cues are, what doesn't sound grammatically correct, do not write it. Yes, you should write it as a whole, check the word limit, and then write it as a whole. So in this case, if it says 3 words and or a number are allowed, go ahead and write at the park. Yeah? Capital letters, capitalizing, or lowercase? Which one do we go for? Why? Why capital letters? Actually, what I mean by this is exactly the same words. Throughout the IELTS paper, if in the answer options, there is the exact same word, 99% of the times they're doing this to confuse you. Don't fall for it. It's a common trap. Yeah? They would definitely paraphrase the answer most of the times. And listen for plurals. What are plurals? With an S. The pronunciation most of the times changes. With different accents it changes. As a non-native speaker, it can be harder to follow plural words. So practice that while you're practicing your listening exams. Yeah? All right. Any questions that you have for listening for me? Any question? It could be based on your practice, yes? Okay. Have you analyzed where you're making a mistake? Yes. So when you know after giving a lot of mock tests or after practicing a lot that you're making a mistake in certain types of questions, target those questions. Are you doing it with a strategy? What is your strategy for MCQs, multiple choice questions?
To be honest, I don't have any
strategy. Yeah. So that's one of the main reasons why sometimes we encounter these questions and we continue to do them in the same way we were doing them previously. So our score will not improve. Yeah? Your strategy should be very simple. You have to work on your speed reading because MCQs require you to read the 4 options and register them, at least retain them for 5 minutes. Yeah? So you have to read them very quickly. You need a very high degree of comprehension and retention in a very small amount of time. Yeah? Only till the time you're listening to that audio clip, you need to be able to quickly skim through the 4 choices that you've been given and select which is the right one. Oftentimes in MCQs, watch out for the keywords. Main, primary, they will be paraphrased. Yeah? It happened with me during my examination. They were the main questions where I made mistakes, yeah? Although in the final IELTS I didn't. So I will tell you what has worked. Yes, I will not tell you theory. I teach a lot of students who are Uzbeks, and they're told to watch 6-minute podcasts, listen to 6-minute podcasts, watch movies, yes? Now, English is a language where speaking, listening, reading, and writing work very cohesively. Yes, while there are different ways to approach each, but they're also unified together. So if you watch a movie, and you listen to the whole movie and you watched it with subtitles to reinforce your learning, but then you didn't talk about it to your friend. You know, you didn't come and say, hey, I watched a movie and let me tell you what it's about. It's not going to get retained in your mind. You're not going to be able to remember it for long. You're not also going to be able to articulate it if you don't practice. So listening is very related to speaking, is related to writing, is related to reading. Yeah? So they're all linked. So what you have to do in this case is when you listen to something, try to also articulate it to another person, because the best test of understanding something is to be able to explain it to another person. Yeah? Like the way I'm talking to you about something, I'm not reading from somewhere, correct? Why is that? Because I've comprehended it well. That's why I'm able to communicate with you. Similarly, you should be able to tell your friend, hey, I want you to sit down with me for 5 minutes. I'm going to tell you about this movie I watched. In most cases, he will laugh at you, but if he's your good friend, he will give you the time to listen to you, yeah? Any other questions regarding listening? Yes, please.
What can you suggest for those who are taking the computer-based IELTS?
So in my opinion, I prefer the computer-based IELTS, because in the paper-based, if I'm not wrong, you have to transfer your answers, and you get some amount of time to do that. In the computer-based, what I did was to give a lot of mock tests that were available free of cost on the internet, that were in the same format of the IELTS exam, the final IELTS exam. So if you sign up through British Council, I'm sure that they give you, I think, two free practice tests of the same kind. So they're timed, the whole format is the same, the way they provide the instructions is the same. So your brain gets attuned to answering questions in that format. Yes? Okay. What else? Okay. I'll see if I could make this presentation available for you. Just follow some of these key things. They're like red flags. You know, when you're giving your listening examination, it's not about focusing to listen to what the audio is saying. It's about watching out for these red flags. Just watch out. Okay, is this happening? Okay, in this case, if there's a whether, then I need to consider two choices. If there's a however, it means that the answer could also be the opposite. Yeah? If there's a despite, they could show contrast. Yeah? If there's a word that says main reason, definitely means there are going to be other reasons. So that's what I'm talking about. Watch out for some red flags. Get attuned to doing that. Practice it. In each question, see if any one of these 10 points is coming up. And they will come up very often. Yeah? All right. So if we're clear and through with reading, I'm going to proceed, with listening, I'm going to proceed with reading now. So my question to you is, how do you prepare for reading? And how many people think reading is difficult? Yes. Okay, I expected that. Okay, how do you prepare for reading? Anybody? Yes? Okay, so read a lot of, you said articles?
Yes.
Okay, read a lot of articles. What else? Thank you. How do you prepare for reading? Yes. Very good. That's diligent. 2 articles in a day. Good. And you're reading English books. Okay. How else do you prepare for reading? I saw a lot of hands that said reading is difficult. How do you prepare for reading? Yes? Okay, finally. Reading passages, yeah? Because that's what they're going to ask in the examination. Okay, so you're looking at them from the internet, right? Wherever you can find them on all of these websites that help with IELTS preparation. Okay, so a lot of my students tell me this also. I read articles every day, I watch movies for some time, or maybe TV series, or I'm listening to podcasts. I understand, and they will improve your English, yes? But IELTS, if it's as much a test of, how well you can write, speak, read, and listen, It's also a test of if you've understood what the examiner wants from this, yeah, from you, from this section. So in reading, what do they want from you? They want to see if you can comprehend and identify, evaluate information in different forms of questions. That's all they want, yeah? Now in writing and in speaking, you know that there are the band descriptors. Everybody knows what the band descriptors are? Everybody knows? Yes, if you don't, going forward, I will show it to you in the presentation. But in reading and listening, why don't we have any band descriptors? It's a binary answer. It's either correct or it's incorrect. Yeah, it's not qualitative in nature. You don't have to decide, oh, does it fall under this band or this band? It's just based on the number of marks you have. So in reading, I think if it's above a 35 out of 40, I think you get a 9. Yeah? All right. Now in reading, this is how it is. I think if you get up to 35, you can get an 8 if it's between 30 and 35. And if it's over 35, you can easily score a 9. Okay. Now here's what happens. In reading, I'm going to talk about the biggest mistakes that we're making as students. Have you noticed how some videos will tell you you should read the question first? And certain other videos will tell you, no, you have to skim the passage first. Yes? Now, what happens to a typical student who's attempting the question is, on the left-hand side, you'll have your passage. On the right-hand side, you'll have the question. And you'll expect your eye movement to be something like this. Like you're switching between the question and the passage continuously, right? But eventually, if you don't have a strategy, on the final day, you will forget what some of the videos said, and the nervousness will couple with your the mixture of feelings that you have towards which has to be looked at first, and you will end up looking so many times in different directions that there will be no coherent retention of information. You will not be able to coherently retain any kind of information, either about the passage or about the question. Okay? Now, let me tell you, before I give you my strategy, like I always say, there is no correct answer. How did I come up with these strategies? It's not there on any kind of video. I just practiced a lot. I only had about a week or 8 days to prepare for my examination, and I had to have strategies. I did not have the time to read books and, I had to specifically see, okay, what is the IELTS asking me to do in reading, in listening, in speaking, in writing? I studied the band descriptors. I studied what exactly these question types are, and I used targeted strategies for each question type. And that's exactly what you should do if you want to score an 8 or a 9. Yes? Now let's look at what a strategy looks like, okay? What do? Do you read the question first? Do you read the passage first? Do you skim? Do you scan? You've been taught different reading techniques. What do you do? Well, the strategy to follow depends upon the type of question that's offered to you. So what are the different question types in reading? Anybody? I'm sorry, can you guys go one by one? Gap filling. Multiple choice. Short answer type. True, false, not given. Matching headings. Yes, yes, no, not given. Correct. Yeah? Excellent. So guys, your strategy is going to depend upon the type of question. Now, these question types are broadly what I came across when I was preparing for the IELTS. Okay? I will see if I can just make this presentation available for you, so don't worry about taking pictures. Just focus on what I'm talking about. Okay. Now, the strategy is not so much about what to look at first. I would personally tell you to look at the question first. Why? Because if you don't know what you have to answer, you can skim through the passage, but you will miss out on key information. Yeah? So as a general rule, I always read the question first. But the strategy is not in reading first, which part to read first. The strategy is in which reading technique to use. That's where the strategy comes in. Throughout the reading section, if you can master how you're going to read, using which technique for which question, you're going to get a 9 in reading. Okay? So all of you have been taught these reading techniques? How many of you already know these reading techniques? One person. You guys know this reading technique? No? Okay. So I'm going to explain it to you then. I will take about 2 to 3 minutes to just tell you about these. The first one is intensive reading. What is the meaning of the word intensive? What kind of reading would it require? Fast reading. Actually, intense is part of the word, right? So it means it's got to have some degree of detail, right? So it will not be fast. Intensive reading will be when you're reading to actually comprehend and retain. You're looking for understanding the meaning. So you're going to stop and you're going to read the passage properly. Yeah? Or if you're looking at a paragraph, you're going to stop and you're going to read the paragraph properly. Okay, what about extensive reading? Yeah, it's what you do on the weekends when you're reading a book. Yeah, you have a lot of time. You're not essentially doing it to retain a lot of information. You're just doing it for fun. You're doing it for your own pleasure. Yes? So that's extensive reading. Now, these two are very important. What is skimming? We discussed in the beginning. What is skimming? Just very quickly going through the whole paragraph. Yeah? So if the passage has about 5 to 6 paragraphs, how many seconds would skimming take? Let's take a guess. A minute. Who said? Okay. Anybody else? 30 seconds. Who said that? Okay. Anybody else? 45. Okay, now you guys are just going to give me. Okay. Guys, I spend about 30 seconds to skim a passage that has about 5 to 6 paragraphs. And ideally, you will have around that length. Yes? 30 seconds. So what will you understand in 30 seconds, frankly? Because your eyes are just scanning like a robot. But you will, however, understand in one line, okay, maybe this passage is talking about, I don't know, the process of creating curd. The next paragraph is talking about fermentation. The next paragraph is talking about maybe, you know, how other new ingredients were added to it. The next paragraph, so you know broadly the topic, I would say, or the main essence of each paragraph. But that's all you will know. Yes? So that's skimming, when you read very quickly. 30 seconds, if you can train your brain to read 5 or 6 paragraphs in 30 seconds, that's wonderful. Okay, scanning. Scanning also sounds like skimming, so what's the difference? Excellent. That's exactly what it is. Now, just say, for example, that I have read my question, okay? And the question is that a scientist produced a certain drug, and the question is about that. So the keywords here are the name of the scientist, that specific drug. Maybe if there is a year or a date involved, I would also underline that. And then I would look at the whole passage, and I would first skim. I've already skimmed. Now I'm scanning, because I have 3 keywords. I have the name of the person, I have the name of the drug, and I have maybe a date or a year. Yes, that's mentioned, so I have a period. So I'm going to quickly scan through the passage to see where are these words together. That's called scanning. When you already have some information and you're looking for that specific information in the passage. Am I clear? Yes? So we've covered all of these. Now, very generic question. Which one technique will we not use in the Ielts? Very good. You guys are listening to me. Okay. Extensive because it means that you have a great length of time, you're reading for fluency, and you're not really reading to comprehend and to retain, yes? But in Ielts, it's a super focused and intense environment. You have to use a combination of intensive, skimming, and scanning. So now I'm going to ask you guys, which reading technique? I told you 3. Let's just remember 3, intensive, skimming, and scanning. So in true, false, not given, which technique will we use? Intensive. Somebody said scanning. Intensive. Which one, guys? Intensive. Is there only one correct answer? Is it only intensive? Like, is it only scanning? Scanning with intensive. Somebody is now combining 2. Okay. Close reading. In detail, so that's intensive, okay. So what I wanted to bring out from this conversation is there is no one technique that you will apply to a question. You will apply a combination of one or more. For example, in true, false, not given, if you're skimming, scanning, intensive reading the passage, but you've not read the question, is it going to help you? No. So you have to first read the question. Now that you know the question, I would recommend take 30 seconds, skim through the passage. Okay, skim through the passage. Now look at the first question of TFNG. What will we do? We will identify some keywords. We will say, okay, we need to scan in the passage for these keywords, right? So what all did we use? We first skimmed, then we skimmed the question as well, then we targeted intensive read the first question, and then we scanned the keywords from that question in the passage. So you see how we're using different techniques in the same question? Yes? It sounds very complicated when I say it, but if you train your brain to target each question like this, you would not make a single mistake in reading. Okay? So let's just take one question for example. Okay? Can you guys see the slide? Okay. Paraphrasing. Who here said they have a difficulty with paraphrasing? Yes. Okay, so saying the same thing in different ways. Again, a very important skill in reading. Yeah? Before we start our example, let me just tell you about this. So can you see how it says crime has been increasing? Another way to say it, there has been a lot of criminal activity. Similarly, occurred in the late 1800s. So 1800s are called? Which century? 19th. Exactly. So in the latter half of the 19th century would mean the same thing as occurred in the late 1800s. Similarly, students learn by finding solutions. Another word for students, pupils. Yeah? If you don't know these words, it's going to be slightly harder to tackle reading questions, but that doesn't mean that you have to know the synonym of each word. Okay? All right. So can I proceed, guys? Okay. So this is a small 5-step approach. Most of the time it works. If you want to modify this according to the kind of question you're targeting, do that. So what is this approach? Highlight the keywords in the question. The questions will usually come in order. What does this mean? If you don't know where the answer of question 2 is, it's bound to be between the answers of question 1 and question 3. So only intensive read that part of the passage. Yes? Okay. From the options, search for relevant areas in the text. This will use scanning. Yeah? Read the paragraph to find the answer. Once you finish scanning and you know, okay, these keywords are in paragraph 3, you will intensive read paragraph 3 to kind of see what the answer to that multiple choice question is. Finally, review and categorize each of the options. Yeah? Now, MCQs are one of the toughest questions that my students have told me they encounter in the Ielts exam. So let's just take a good look at one. I'm going to give you 1 minute to quietly read this, and then I'll read it out for you. Is everybody done? Good, that was under a minute. Okay. Clearly, when older people do heavy physical work, thank you, their age may affect their productivity. What is productivity? Yeah, how efficiently you're doing your tasks. Yeah, how much you're able to do in how much time. But other skills may increase with age. So they're saying in the first sentence that clearly when older people are doing heavy physical work, because of their age, they may not be able to do it as well as a young person, but other skills may increase with age, including many that are crucial for good management. So such as an ability to handle people diplomatically, to run a meeting, to spot a problem before it blows up. What's the meaning of blows up? Can a problem increase? Before it happens. So before it blows up, yes, means that before, but what is the meaning of blows up? It shows up. It just shows up, okay? So before it becomes something that is not, you cannot contain, like explosive, yeah? Before it becomes uncontainable. Okay. Peter Hicks, who coordinates OECD work on the policy implications of aging, says that plenty of research suggests older people are paid more because they are worth more. Yeah? So first, the first sentence says, older people can't do heavy physical work because of their age. But the second sentence says that there are some plus points for these older people because they've worked for such a long time. And finally, the third sentence is about this person who's saying that research suggests that older people are paid more. Yeah, because they're worth more than younger people. Okay, now let's look at the question. Which two advantages are mentioned by the writer of the text? Now you guys will tell me what we should use. Now this is only one question, so there is no skimming scanning, but we would use the 5-step approach. So number one, we identify keywords. Where? Do we identify keywords in the passage or the question? Very good. In the question. We first read the question. We identify the keywords in the question. Okay. So here, what are the keywords? Two advantages. The meaning of advantages is something positive. You automatically know you have to look for things that are positive about older people. Okay? All right. Let's look at the first one. They are less likely to be involved in careless accidents. Does the passage say anything about accidents? It's irrelevant. Okay? So these are the positive qualities. Once we've identified the keyword that says two advantages, this is what we look at in the passage. And now that we're looking at the first option, we know that none of the sentences in the passage are talking about accidents, so that's the incorrect answer. They can predict areas that may cause trouble in the future. Okay, which sentence is indicating that? Okay, so predict and spot are words that I've highlighted in the same color. Areas that may cause trouble and problem. Yes, trouble and problem are also synonymous. Okay, so when we review this, we feel that this is absolutely correct. Spotting something before it blows up means to be able to predict the problem. Okay? All right. They're able to train younger workers. No? How many people say no for train younger workers? Okay. How many say yes, they are able to train younger workers? Okay. But where in the passage does it talk about training younger workers? Right? So relevance. Okay. That's incorrect. What about they can deal with unexpected problems? Might be true. Okay. Because of the sentence that says spot a problem before it blows up. Yeah. But just because the word problem is there, see, notice, unexpected problem and can deal with. So just because the word problem is there, that doesn't mean that this sentence means the same as the sentence in the passage. The sentence in the passage is saying that they're able to predict things and contain them before they increase to a very large magnitude. But here it's saying they can deal with unexpected things. So the meaning is slightly different, correct? So this would be incorrect. They are more conscientious. What is the meaning of the word conscientious? Okay, maybe they are smart. Do we know the meaning of the word conscientious? Let's assume that we don't know it. Yeah, whenever I take this question with my students, they don't know it. So let's assume we don't know it. Should we just not attempt this question? Somebody said you don't attempt questions when you don't understand the meaning. Do not do that, okay? Now we've already ruled out that we have one correct answer. We just need one more. So we're going to use the process of elimination. We'll keep this as a question mark. Let's look at the next one. They are prepared to work for lower salaries. Is this true? Definitely not true, okay? All right. What about they are more skilled in personal relationships? Where is it given? Tell me the sentence in the passage where it's given. Paid more because they're worth more? What about the words diplomacy and skilled in personal relationships? What is the meaning of the word diplomatically? So diplomacy is not to do with giving money. Diplomacy is how you handle interpersonal relationships. Yeah? You have diplomats who work with different embassies across the world, right? They're called diplomats, yes? They have to deal with people from different cultures, different religions, different countries. So they have to be very diplomatic. They have to have people skills to be able to deal with others, right? So they are skilled in personal relationships, and diplomatic mean almost the same thing, yeah? So this would be correct. So now, even if we don't know the meaning of the word conscientious, we're still able to answer this question? Yes? Never leave a question blank. Never leave a question blank. Okay, guys? Is this clear? Yes? How many of you, without any strategy, could have done this correctly? It is possible. It's all right. But having a strategy ensures that if the difficulty increased, which is exactly what happens in the IELTS, right? How many sections do we have in reading? 3. And with each passing section, I think the difficulty level increases, yes? So it would be a combination of the same kind of words, but it would be slightly more difficult to comprehend. So follow the strategy, guys. Okay. Some basic tips to remember. It doesn't matter if you don't know a word. Simply use the process of elimination. A common trap is all of the above. When you see it, please evaluate if that is the correct answer, yeah? Paraphrasing, always compare the meanings, not the words. So we noticed in the previous question that we had the word problem and the word problem in the passage also. So both question and passage. But when we put the whole context in place, meaning when we looked at the sentence in the question, the meaning did not match. Do not match the words, match the meanings. And always read the question first. If you're, like as a general rule, that's what I practice. Answers that repeat the same words, exact same words, are there to confuse you. Avoid them, yeah? Those options will not be the correct answer. Okay, are we through with reading? Yes? Any questions about reading? Yeah? Any questions? Yes? How do you improve your reading skills? Okay, so what I do is, if you ask me in general in life, how do I improve my reading skills? I read a lot of books. I've been reading them from, I think, a very long time. Ever since I was maybe 8 or 9, I've been very fond of reading both fiction and non-fiction. If you're asking about IELTS, then please don't just suddenly pick up a book and start reading it. Please do targeted questions that are asked in this exam. So did you notice the slide where we identified the different types of questions? I would suggest take 48 hours, spend it on only one type of question. Yeah? You would take that much time to read about 100 to 150 pages of a book, right? Don't do that. Do that on the weekend. Yeah, tell me. Okay, okay. There is a very interesting thing you can do to improve your score in reading. This is exactly what I did. So I had only 8 days. You have 2 extra days. You're in a better position than I am. What I did is, before I started any kind of practice, I gave 3 mock tests. You know that there are endless mock tests that are available on the internet. So I gave 3 mock tests, and there are 40 questions in reading, correct? Right? So what I did is, I wrote down my answers for the 40 of them side by side. The results of my 3 mock tests, I wrote side by side, and I noticed a pattern in the kind of questions I was getting wrong. So I don't know about you guys, but for me, when I started to learn IELTS, TFNG, true, false, not given, was the hardest type of question to answer, you know? And now, there is not a single true, false, not given that I get wrong. But that's what you have to do. You have to first sit and analyze where you stand. That's called baselining. You know, you give a mock test before you've started any kind of practice. And you compare your different answers to see where you're making mistakes. If you know what type of question you're making a mistake in, you know that you have to practice specifically in that type of question. Yeah? Now, about understanding how to target that question, I would say use a strategy. Yeah? I watched a lot of YouTube videos for true, false, not given, for yes, no, not given, for multiple choice question, short answer type question, long answer type, everything. Yeah? Yes?
Nowadays, students control about cognition.
Yes. So, you know, when you exceed time in reading, when you are not familiar with paraphrasing, and you're still trying to match words and not the meaning. You understand? In reading, it's a test of how well you can understand when things are paraphrased. When you don't have the skill of paraphrasing, you're stuck. Because you understood the question, but in the passage, you're not able to relate which specific sentence means that in terms of meaning. Yeah? The words may be the same, or the words may be different, but the meaning has to be matched. So I would recommend that if you want to save on time, number 1, practice paraphrasing a lot, learn like synonyms of different kinds of words, improve your vocabulary in reading, and when you're doing these mock tests, you won't get it right the first time. I used to time myself. So by the time I gave the final examination in about 8 days, I was able to finish reading 10 minutes before the actual due time. But that's only because when I was practicing, I focused on doing everything very quickly. You have to time yourself. There's a learning curve for everybody. It takes a little bit of time, but you have to keep repeatedly doing it over and over again. And I followed a process. First, I identified which questions I'm weak at. I only targeted those questions like TFNG, I told you, MCQs, and matching headings was something that was hard for me because it required a combination of skimming, intense reading, scanning. So I focused on these 3 questions a lot. I spent 2 days doing one type of question. I'm not joking. I think out of those 8 days, I must have spent just 5 on reading. So that's how I proceeded with it. Yeah? All right. Any other questions regarding reading? Okay. All right. So guys, because I have to complete one more section, I'm going to go ahead with writing. Now, writing is the most difficult thing, but I'm going to give you a technique today that is going to enable you to write on any topic under the sun. Okay? Yeah? All right. So these are the band descriptors for writing. I'm sure all of you have taken a look at it, and they're quite complex when you look at them at first go. So for the sake of simplicity, we're going to call them this. Task achievement is, did you answer the question? Yeah? Task achievement. Did you answer the question with relevant information? Coherence and cohesion. Structuring, sequencing. How well are you able to paragraph? At the same time, while you are dividing information, how does it look like as a unified whole? That's what coherence and cohesion is. Lexical resource. We're just going to call it the vocabulary, but also how precisely you're able to use that vocabulary. Yes? Knowing a word doesn't mean that you're going to be able to use it correctly. Okay? Grammatical range and accuracy. This is where your grammar kicks in, but also how accurately you're using that grammar. Different form of sentence structures, different, collocations, complex sentences, subjugating clauses, yeah? Subordinate clauses, relative clauses, all of that comes under your grammatical range and accuracy. Okay. Now, writing task 1. Key information is that you're required to write 150 words. Now, ideally, they don't specify how much time you need to spend, right? You have 1 hour. So you can spend 20 minutes on writing task 1 or 30 minutes, 40 minutes. But what's important to know is task 1 is only 33% of your total marking. Yeah? And task 2 is 60%. So you would focus lesser. I would recommend about 20 minutes on this and focus for 40 minutes on writing task 2. All right. Now, since these are the type of questions that appear, obviously you would not write in essay format, correct? You would write in what style? Report writing. You would not write in the form of introduction, body paragraph 1, 2, 3, conclusion, no. You would have a very report writing style. So I'm directly going to jump into an example. Yes? Now this is a line graph, as you can see. Is it clear to everybody? Yeah? Okay, it quickly shows the consumption of 3 spreads. Yeah? Spreads are like butter, margarine, yes, chocolate, the different spreads that you can apply on foods. And these are the consumption patterns of those spreads across almost, I think, from 1981 to 2007. Yeah? All right. So the general format that I use when I'm targeting writing task 1 is an introduction, an overview, and 2 body paragraphs. Yes? So in the introduction, what do you guys generally write? You just paraphrase the question. Good. So here's what I've done. The line graph illustrates, which is another word for shows, depicts, describes, the amount of 3 kinds of spreads, in brackets I've mentioned them, you can do that, which were consumed over 26 years. So I just did a quick math, and between 81 and 2007, I said there are 26 years, and the units are measured in grams. Yes? Simple. Now in the overview, what do? Something unusual, or what can we do? The overall trend, something that stands out, yes? The easiest thing to do is to mark the highest and the lowest points of something, yeah? So here, I've just mentioned, overall, the consumption of margarine and butter have increased or decreased over time? Decreased over time, while for low fat and reduced spreads, it has increased. So I said it rose. At the start of the period, butter was the most popular. So that's another way of saying most consumed, most eaten. Because I've used the word consume, I'm kind of not using it again. And following that, low fat and reduced spreads became the most widely used spread in the final years. So what does this say? It basically talks about all three of them, but in an overall format. Yeah? Overall, what's the trend? Has it decreased or increased over time? And when it started, which was the most popular? When it ended, which is now the most popular? Okay. How would you structure body paragraphs? So you've already talked about the beginning, end, or the highest and lowest in the overview. I would recommend you go into one level of detail and you mention statistics and numbers. Data is what they want to say. Yes? Now, is there a specific format in which I should write this? Just because margarine is first, should I write about margarine first? I can decide how to approach these two body paragraphs. I can decide if I want to talk only about margarine in the first paragraph and then talk about the other two in the second, or the other way around. Okay? So here's what I've done. With regards to the amount of butter used, it began at 140 grams, and here notice I've said about 140. So you don't have to get into the graph and measure exactly how much it is. You can write approximate values, yeah? 140 grams, and then it peaked. So peaked is a word that indicates? Yeah, but it also says that it peaked, meaning it did not go higher than that, yes? Okay, at 160 grams before falling dramatically to about 50 grams. Dramatic is a word that indicates intensity, you know. There was a huge fall, that's what it means. Okay, likewise, approximately 90 grams of margarine was eaten in the first year, after which the figure fluctuated slightly. What is the meaning of fluctuated? Moved up and down both. Yes, this is the hand sign for it. And dropped to a low of 40 grams in the final year. Okay? Now notice, I'm now talking about the opposite trend. So on the other hand, the consumption of low fats and reduced spreads. So I decided to club margarine and butter in one paragraph and low fats and reduced spreads in the other paragraph. It's absolutely fine what you want to do. Yeah? On the other hand, the consumption of low fats and reduced spreads only started in 1996 at about 10 grams here. And this figure, which has reached a high of just over 80 grams 5 years later, fell slightly in the final years to approximately 70 grams. Yes? Okay. Now, how do you prepare for writing task 1? Number 1, know your structure. Number 2, ideas, guys, how do you prepare for writing task 1? Okay, good. So remember the 4 things that they're asking you for in the band descriptors. Remember that. So for task achievement, you have to follow the structure, meaning you have to have an introduction, you have to have an overview and 2 body paragraphs. So you should practice writing overviews, practice paraphrasing the topic sentence to write your introduction. And in the body paragraphs, look at different types of questions and see how you like to club information or data together. When it comes to grammatical range, you should try and use some complex sentences. So if you notice, there was the use of while, right? Although, yeah, yes, exactly, whereas, and then identifying like from, where, to, where, did it rise, did it fall, yes? Cohesive and cohesion would be our paragraphing skills. So how well we've divided data. Yes? Now, if there were more than 3 in that graph, if there were 5, but you noticed that 3 products have increasing trends and 2 products have decreasing trends. So it's absolutely all right to club the 3 products that are increasing, talk about them in one paragraph, and then club the 2 that are decreasing and talk about them in the second. Yes? Okay? All right. Subordinating clauses. So let me just give you examples for what I'm talking about. Time-related conjunctions. So when you write after, as soon as long as, before, still, yes? Concession and comparison, although, as though, even though, just as. Ideally, what you should do to improve your score is to try and practice sentences that have these words in them. Just normal sentences that have these words in them. Okay? Okay, as far as describing statistics go, how can we talk about describing increase? Boom, grow, boost, Rise, excellent. What about decrease? Decline, drop. Downward trend. Saw a decrease. Plummeted. Plummeted. Okay, what else? Go down, plunge, plummet, decline, drop, diminish, fall, all of them. What about when you're describing how? So when you saw one of the graphs for, I think, reduced spreads, it started at only about 10 grams, but it shot up, right? It shot up suddenly. So that kind of steep rise would be a sharp increase, correct? It would not be a consistent increase. No, it would be a sharp increase. So we can use words like rapid, sharp, considerable, significant, substantial, steady, yes? What do they do to the words that we are using? They add an intensity. You know, how is it described? Okay. And finally, something that remains stable or remains steady, or another very good word for it is plateau. Something that plateaus, it remains stable, it does not change. All right. When you're using synonyms, you have to use it precisely. So in lexical resource, for those of you who will read the band descriptors, you will notice that the word precision is also there. What does that mean? If for a trend like this, I write slow rise, does it make sense? Is this a slow rise of any kind? Imagine the time is on this axis. It's not a slow rise, it's a sharp increase, right? So I would say something like, slowly climbed here, but between this period, there was a sharp increase. So you have to use these words precisely. Clear? Okay, some of the words that I've highlighted that you can look at after the presentation have spoken about the relative clauses, complex sentences, and use of these words that describe increase and decrease. All right. Now, guys, just one thing that I want to draw your focus on is there are different kinds of questions. If you attempt all of these and practice enough, you would have a general templated version of each question. Yes? So when you have process diagrams, you would use words like passes through, goes along, flows from, into something, then, from, right? So you would use these kinds of words. If it was a pie chart, you would use words like accounted for, proportion of, share of. So this vocabulary is something you have to learn for different types of questions. Yes? That only comes with practice. All right. Now task 2, writing task 2. Very quickly, does anybody use a strategy to write an essay? What's your structure?
Peel structure.
Very good. Does everybody use the peel structure? Yes? Okay, so let's see with an example if you guys can tell me. So this is a generic essay structure. You can have 1, 2, or 3 body paragraphs. In general, there's an introduction and then there's a conclusion. Yeah? Now in the introduction, a lot of people will tell you to write a hook. You guys know what a hook is?
Yes.
I would recommend against it. Okay, now I'll tell you why. For non-native speakers to come up with a hook takes time. Have you noticed? When you see a topic sentence and you immediately start to think, what's my hook going to be? Yeah? Whereas a sentence can be as simple as a lot of researchers have been interested in the phenomena of increasing technology, how it's affecting man. So it could just be something very simple. And it could link with your paraphrase topic sentence. But you take about 5 minutes to just think about your hook sentence. So I would recommend in the introduction, don't think of a hook sentence. Just follow a general structure of background statement, paraphrase your question, and then say, in my opinion, I believe that this is a little bit better than this, or in this essay I will discuss the following points. Now, when you write the body paragraphs, it's important to use peel, right? Yes? But before you use peel, what do? You have to generate ideas, because your P, which is your point of peel, has to be around an idea. So how do you do that? Say, for example, the topic is phones should be restricted in the classroom. So generate ideas around they should and they shouldn't. Come on. They should be restricted. Why? Very good. Distracting. Then interrupts your learning process, right? Then Reduces focus. Very good. So you came up with 3 ideas. Yes? Why shouldn't they be banned? While the teacher is teaching. You can translate some words. Very good. That's a good point. Somebody from your house might have to reach you in an emergency. You should have your phone. It keeps you connected. Sometimes you want to know how many likes you have on Instagram, even in the middle of a lecture, right? Yeah. So guys, now what I want you to focus on is, whenever you're targeting an essay, you will read the topic, you'll understand it, you have your own structure, peel, etc. But when you're generating ideas, you always have to have a position. What I mean by that is, to what extent do you agree or disagree? Or are you in the middle? Now, if you're a beginner in writing, please either stick to this side or this side. Now, why am I saying that? Because your position throughout the essay will be extremely clear to the examiner. You know, this person strongly agrees that phones should be banned during the class. Or this person strongly or firmly believes that the phone should not be banned because it's a tool of great learning, yeah, and reachability. So decide your position. Now, in general, if I asked all of you, you would say, please don't ban phones. We love our phones in class, right? But which is the easier essay to write? Which is the easier essay? The one that has more ideas. Exactly. Exactly. Sometimes, and I'm telling you this from personal experience, you have your opinions and you firmly believe in something, but the easier essay to write is the opposite of what you believe in. Because you can provide more ideas and extend those ideas along those lines, yes? So in this case, I would have gone for phones should be banned. Very easy to write. I'll pick 2 ideas, I'll give examples, I'll say that research suggests, and I'll finish my peel structure, okay? Okay, let's look at just one more topic. Infants should be given iPads. Should babies be given iPads? No? Okay, so you believe no. So can you generate some ideas around they shouldn't?
Because they can get offensive content from their iPad.
Very good. Inappropriate content, then?
They can also be distracted from their learning process.
Okay, so they could be doing something valuable, but they're wasting time on the iPad. Okay, what else? So the blue rays that come out of the iPad could hurt their eyes. Hello?
Kind of outdoor activities.
Exactly. So it's taking away their time from outdoor activities. Okay, why should we give them iPads? Come on, guys. Why should we give children iPads?
Their creativity.
Creativity increases. They adapt to technology much faster in life. Why else should iPads be given to children? To learn something, I would say new languages, right? Because the only language that children can learn is the one their parents speak. But you have apps like Duolingo today that teach children who are just 6 or 7 years old different kinds of languages, right? Good. So you came up with so many different points for should and shouldn't. So which essay will you write in this case?
Which is stronger.
Correct. When you have a lot of ideas that you're able to generate for both, then don't think about which is the easier essay to write. Go with what you believe in. That's why I took 2 examples here. So in the case of phones being banned, because you're all students and you're not a teacher, you would say, no, 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 we don't want to ban phones. But the easier essay to write would be ban phones. In this case, you're able to generate ideas along both the topics, agree and disagree. So go ahead and choose either one. The peel structure, for lack of time, I'm just going to show you very quickly. So everybody knows what the peel is, right? Anybody who doesn't know what the peel is? Okay, it's point, evidence, explain, and link. So point is the topic sentence of your paragraph. It's a paragraph writing technique. E stands for evidence, where you give some kind of example to build credibility. Explain is where you're explaining the reasoning behind why you believe in that point. And link is just a conclusive sentence that links back to the first point. I'm going to show you how it works. So for the point where infants should not be given iPads, they should not be given iPads because studies have shown that children under 2 can face developmental delays. So instantly, when you read my P, the first point, you know that this paragraph is about how children are affected by technology and their health is impacted. In my evidence, I will say that a pediatric study has shown that children of a certain age who used iPads a lot or technology a lot had developmental delays. right? Now, nobody can refute this, right? I'm not a pediatric surgeon or even a pediatrist, but I can still make a statement like this, which can go to support and give credibility to my P point. Now, in explanation, I'm saying the reason for this is very simple. It's because screen time is replacing what he said. Key activities, they could be playing outside, but now that is replaced by screen time, right? And finally, I would link it with a sentence that says, evidence suggests infants who have a lot of screen time will have negative consequences in their speech development, which is what I spoke in my P. So that's how the Peel method works. Now, writing an introduction and conclusion is simple, yes? But when you use the Peel method, you're able to write a paragraph, okay? Yes, clear? And I drew a blank. So you have to be able to talk about things that you have not prepared for, that you don't know about. When you're doing this, remember, you already are at a disadvantage because you may not have a lot of information about it. Where can you do well? In following your strategy, in following the structure, in following the Peel method, so that around a topic where you don't have many ideas, you should not sound like you have no flow, no coherence, no cohesion. Then you will lose even more marks. And this is what we do. Students spiral, by the way. They look at the topic and they're like, I have no clue how being a good sportsman can help me develop personal skills to manage people better. I don't know how they're connected, and what do I do now? Oh, I can't answer this. So I'm not going to be able to even do my cohesion, coherence, task achievement, anything properly. Because then your mind is nervous, and you're generating too many thoughts that are irrelevant. Okay? Think about it in a logical way. You will always come up with a minimum of 2 ideas. Make it an introduction, 2-body paragraph, and conclusion essay. Simple. Okay? All right. Any other questions for writing? Okay, so that ends my presentation, guys. Thank you so much for being such a patient audience. Thank you so much. If there are any questions, you can please reach out to me, and I'll be happy to answer them. I hope you guys got to learn something today, and I hope that you can improve your score with it. Thank you.